This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
They're taking Diddy's tapes, oh my! There's a certain kind of silence that follows a verdict. Not applause, not outrage, just that slow, low hum of a life coming apart in real time. For Sean Diddy Combs, that silence landed like a freight train on October 3rd of 2025 when a federal judge in Manhattan looked him in the eye and said he was going to prison for 4 years and 2 months. But prison wasn't the only sentence, because a few days later, a new order dropped, one that hit even deeper than the time. The government wants stuff. The so-called freak-off tapes, the phones, the hard drives, the computers, every scrap of digital history connected to his hidden empire of control. And now the same FBI that once raided his mansions will own the physical proof of what went on behind those locked doors. Yeah, that's gone in the hands of the government. Why, you ask? Well, it was part of a crime, and they seize those sort of things. It started as routine paperwork, a consent preliminary order of forfeiture filed October 8th in the Southern District of New York. But hidden in the dry legal phrasing were the words that made every attorney in the room sit up a little bit straighter. Property used or intended to be used to commit or facilitate the offenses. The phrase is government speak for, we're keeping it. Now, this could be much worse. Let's get that straight right off the bat. They could have taken homes. They could have taken vehicles. They could have taken a lot of stuff. They took old VHS tapes with Diddy on them. Tapes they already knew what was on. Tapes they probably already have in their custody, quite honestly. They don't have to return it now. It's part of the old Mann Act. The same law once used against everyone from Jack Johnson to R. Kelly. And property used to transport or facilitate prostitution is fair game for forfeiture. So when the raids back in March of 2024 pulled out boxes of tapes labeled with locations, Ibiza 1 through 10, New York sessions, private footage A, and hard drives full of recordings from security systems and iPhones, prosecutors didn't see personal property. They saw evidence. Now they saw leverage. Combs' attorneys fought the move, arguing the recordings were consensual adult material protected by the First Amendment. Their line was simple. Far from the government's lurid descriptions, the videos show adults having consensual sex, plain and simple. But the court wasn't buying it. Because when you're convicted under the Mann Act, it doesn't matter how consensual you claim things were. If the transportation or the facilitation crossed state or international lines for paid sex, the property tied to it becomes contaminated under the law. And so Diddy's empire of secrecy is about to be boxed up, cataloged, and shelved inside the FBI's evidence vault. And let's be real, it already is. Cameras, hard drives, every digital file that ever captured his private world. Think about that for a second. For a man whose entire career was built on controlling image, from polished music videos to all white party invites, the government now controls the raw footage and the unfiltered truth. That's not just evidence, that's humiliation as a matter of record. This kind of forfeiture isn't new. In fact, it's one of the oldest ways the United States flexes power when a conviction alone doesn't seem to cut it. The logic is simple. Take away the tools of the crime and the profits of it, and you dismantle the empire built on it. Yeah, that's going to really be making an impact here in the case of Diddy. But that's the principle of the law. When it happens to celebrities, the symbolism, it hits a little differently. Take Martin Shkreli, for example, the pharma bro, who jacked up the price of life-saving medication and laughed about it on live streams. When he went down for securities fraud, the government didn't just fine him. They took his prized possession. A kind of thing that many, many people had wanted, and he spent a lot of money for. The one-of-a-kind Wu-Tang Clan album, Once Upon a Time in Shylon. This is the album that they made one copy of and released to one person. And he was the original purchaser of it. A work of art gone. Ended up being sold by U.S. Marshals to satisfy a judgment. I actually know the person who bought it. One man's property turned into the state's asset. Then there was Paul Manafort, political operative and architect of deception, whose plea deal in 2018 included the forfeiture of multiple New York properties, penthouses, brownstones, bank accounts, even an insurance policy. To the public, those weren't just properties. They were proof that the power game had a paper trail. And when the law catches up, marble foyers and foreign accounts don't make you untouchable. And of course, Bernie Madoff, the king of illusion himself, when his $170 billion fraud collapsed, the government didn't stop at a life sentence. They went after everything. Homes, yachts, jewelry, artwork. His Hamptons mansion became just another line item on an auction list. Forfeiture is not vengeance. It's bookkeeping with a side of symbolism. In Diddy's case, the stakes are more intimate. They are. The forfeited property isn't a yacht or a piece of art. It's a digital confession. Those tapes, the ones prosecutors call the Ibiza tapes, allegedly show-off orchestrated freak-off sessions, parties where escorts and guests were filmed under Combs' direction. Some witnesses in earlier filings described elaborate setups, professional lighting, controlled environments, camera crews. The defense says it's adult entertainment. The government calls it evidence of transport for prostitution. Either way, those recordings are now state property. And you can rent them soon at the state Blockbuster Video that they also seized. No, you can't. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is tasked with holding the physical devices before handing them to the FBI for permanent custody. It's bureaucratic language for something much darker, the transformation of personal vice into public evidence. There's some psychological weight to that, knowing that everything you filmed, everything you curated for private control is now frozen inside a government server, preserved for audit, not pleasure. Raises a strange kind of existential question. What's left of a celebrity when the brand collapses, but the archive survives? When the state becomes a curator of your secrets? For Diddy, that question will play out over the next few months as ancillary hearings determine whether anything can be returned and whether further property like vehicles or real estate used to facilitate those sessions can be taken as well. As of now, they're not touching those things. Under federal law, if prosecutors prove that a property was used to commit or facilitate the crime, they can take it. If they can prove the proceeds were used to buy it, it's gone. And if they can't separate what's clean from what's tainted, they can seize the lot and let the courts sort it out later. Again, likely not what's going to be happening here in this case. That would be quite extreme overreach. Is it something they could do? Yes. Yes, it is. And that's a scary prospect for any human being out there. The fact that the government does have that much overreach. Well, you may be sitting here in the case of Diddy going, well, this is great. Civil forfeiture. Yeah, take it. There's plenty of places where this is abused. And many departments use it to fund the department, military style, in ways that go far beyond the DARE program and officer friendly. Civil forfeiture in this country, on many, many cases, and you can look at each one individually and go, well, this one, yeah, that makes sense. This one, this just seems like overreach, and there's a lot of overreach. Has funded the militaristic lifestyle, if you will, of many police departments. Those tanks and shit, where'd you get the money for that? Civil forfeiture. Not that somebody civilly forfeited a tank, but when you civilly forfeiture money that you have on you, when you're accused of a crime that you may later be actually absolved of, it's a lot of cases where they still keep it. Yeah. You can do your research. I encourage you to. Civil forfeiture is a scary process in this country that exists and can be abused without a lot of oversight. That's reality. So while, yes, in a Diddy situation, we may be cheering this along and going, yes, just like we may be going, Brian Koberger has everything he has coming to him in prison. But if they can use it against that person without oversight, they can use it against your ass too. Just if they say, we think you did this, even if you prove you didn't. The process isn't quick, but it is relentless. It has a history of turning excess into evidence. There's a reason the Justice Department keeps a special division for asset forfeiture and money laundering, because sometimes taking a criminal off the street isn't enough. You have to dismantle the illusion of power that made the crime possible. So yes, I am not saying civil forfeiture, as you know, in every case, is bad. There is a rhyme and a reason to it and does serve a purpose. I am saying this is a card in a world in which we live where there's a lot of overstep going on that can be used to abuse levels, to go against people some may just simply not like, not monsters like Diddy. So be aware. In the Madoff case, he sold off his yachts, liquidated Shkreli's collectibles, and clawed back Hollywood money from the Malaysian 1MDB scandal that funded the Wolf of Wall Street. It's also why we still talk about those cases, because when the state takes your possessions, it's not just about restitution, it's about reputation. Forfeiture is a public unmasking. And that's what makes the Diddy order so fascinating and devastating. He was sentenced to 50 months in prison, $500,000 fine, and 5 years of supervised release on 2 counts of transporting individuals He beat the bigger racketeering and trafficking charges. If he had lost those, you can damn well bet every property he had would have been sucked up by the government. But for someone who's built an identity on being the boss, even a smaller conviction carries an insult: loss of control. The image of federal agents cataloging his phones and tapes, it's kind of cinematic. The irony is suffocating. The man who once filmed everything now has the government pressing play. And if the rumors of additional digital evidence are true, more hidden drives, cloud accounts, encrypted backups, the fight could stretch longer after he's out of prison. The defense is already preparing constitutional challenges, arguing the seizure violates privacy and First Amendment protections. But the law is not on their side. Courts have historically given wide latitude when property is tied to a conviction under the Mann Act. Even if the footage depicts constitutional acts, its role in the facilitation of illegal transport is enough. That's the brutal precision of forfeiture law. It doesn't care about how artistic or private you think the material is, or what you think at all, even what the law is in some cases. It only cares about how you used it. If you zoom out, you can see a pattern. The way power eats itself. Shkreli wanted to own a single piece of art that made him untouchable. Madoff wanted to own trust itself. Manafort wanted to own influence. And Diddy? He wanted to own control of image, of people, of pleasure. But control is a fragile illusion. And when the law finally comes calling, it doesn't just take your freedom, it rewinds your entire history and decides what parts of it are evidence. That's why forfeiture stories land harder than prison sentences, because they strip away myth. The yachts, the art, the mansions, they become auction lots. Tapes and drives, they become exhibits. The brand, it becomes a case number. So what happens next? Well, the government will hold the recordings in FBI custody while the appeals play out. Combs' legal team will argue the scope and privacy. There may be third-party claims from business partners or production companies or who knows what. But the odds of the freak-off tapes ever returning to his possession, at least the ones they have in their possession, are slim. The same statute that took down traffickers and smugglers for decades now extends to celebrity excess, because the law doesn't care about status. only about use. And that's the part that makes his story feel so inevitable. For years, Diddy protected an image of untouchable wealth and command. The man who owned the night. Now the government owns the receipts. When you strip away the headlines, what's left is a story about ego, evidence, and empire. A man who built his power around controlling every frame of his life is now living inside a narrative he can't edit. That's what civil forfeiture really is. Not just punishment, but inversion. Everything that once represented freedom becomes the proof of captivity. And somewhere in an evidence vault under fluorescent lights, there's a stack of hard drives labeled with his name. Maybe VHS tapes. Maybe beta. They sit on a steel shelf, numbered, logged, locked behind government seals. They won't be streamed. They won't be sold. They'll just exist, silent, sealed, and waiting. A reminder that when the music stops, when the cameras belong somewhere else, and when the empire becomes evidence, the party's over. Give me your thoughts in the comment section. There's a lot to unpack in this story. There is. I feel no pity for Diddy. I'm kind of surprised they didn't try to go after more stuff, quite honestly, but it is what it is. Civil forfeiture. It can be a scary thing. It really can. So, I encourage you, look into that one a little bit. You might be a little shocked of the overreach. And it's not just after big celebrities. I mean, every once in a while you get one of those. But the sea is filled with normal human beings just like you and me. And those are the ones that are being gone after, sometimes rightly and sometimes wrongly, and ripping apart those lives and destroying them. And they don't have an army of podcasters to raise the flag and go, this seems a little off. It's a weird subject. It really is. Dig into it a little bit. Give me your thoughts in the comments section. Until next time, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.